Deadpool 2 is the sequel to the first film that came out in 2016, and that was a huge smash hit, especially for a rated R comic book film. And in this film, Ryan Reynolds is back as Wade Wilson, the merc with the mouth, who was doing pretty much the same thing that he was doing in the first film until one day a time traveler named Cable, played by Josh Brolin, time travels to Deadpool's present day to find a young mutant named Russell, played by Julian Dennison, who is on the verge of freaking out about his powers, and Cable is afraid that if he continues to go along this path, that Russell is going to cause a lot of damage to the future, so he's on his way to kill the kid, and Deadpool decides to try to stop Cable and prevent him from killing the kid, and while doing so tries to form up his own team, the X-Force. The first Deadpool, I'm in love with that film. I think it's actually a perfect satire on comic book films and superhero movies in general, and it just helps that the hero himself is actually pretty stellar, and Ryan Reynolds knew exactly how to perform that character. So of course when they announced that they were making a sequel, I couldn't wait for it. They got the guy who co-directed parts of John Wick and made Atomic Blonde, which I think is a decent film, and I couldn't wait to see what he was going to bring to the table. I was excited to see that the writers were coming back. I was excited of the addition of Domino and also Cable, and the fact that Josh Brolin is playing him, and Thanos this summer is insane, but I wanted to keep some of my hype reserved because the marketing for this film, once again, like the first one, was stellar, but the studio, 20th Century Fox, the thing is, back in 2015, they released a film called Kingsman: The Secret Service, which I loved and I thought was really unique and clever, and then they released a sequel 2 years later, and I thought, hey, this looks pretty fantastic, and then I saw it and was extremely disappointed, and I was just a little concerned maybe Deadpool 2 could possibly go in this direction. Luckily, it did not. Deadpool 2 is a much better film than Kingsman: The Golden Circle, without a doubt. Now, does it live up to what the first film was as far as quality? I don't really think so. I think the first Deadpool film is kind of perfect, and this film definitely does have its issues here and there, but overall, this is one of the most fun experiences I've had this summer. Deadpool 2 has had me laughing more than any movie that's come out this year so far. Like, it's that hysterical. And that's why I'm so happy that the writers came back. They and Ryan Reynolds really understand the humor and the character of Deadpool, so when you see him on screen, there really wasn't any moments for me where I thought Deadpool was saying jokes that were out of his character. Everything just felt perfect for him, and I'm glad that that consistency lasted from the first film. But I'm also really happy with some of the dramatic stuff they did, because in a sequel it's very easy to just do exactly the same thing over and over, and there are a couple portions where plot-wise you can kind of pick out like, oh, that's kind of similar to the first movie. That's almost completely ripped out from the first film, you just replace some characters. However, although there are those moments that are familiar feeling, there are other moments that are genuinely very new and very fresh, both comedic and dramatically. The stuff they try to do with Wade Wilson to make him a better character and to humanize him a lot more was actually pretty great to me. And that's something I think great sequels just do, is that they have the character not unlearn something they learned from the first film only to relearn it. They actually learn something new on their journey, and I think they did a really good job with the character treatment in that way. And the introduced bond between him and the kid, Julian Dennison, who I thought did a pretty good job in this film, I actually really liked, and I've heard some complaints about the kid, and I don't really look at him negatively. Like, to me, he is just a young kid who had a pretty haunting past, who is now freaking out. His emotions are running rampant, and he also has to deal with these powers as well. Like, he acted exactly how I'd expect a kid in his shoes to act, so I didn't really hate him at all. I thought he did a very good job. I didn't see Hunt for the Wilderpeople, which is the kid's first film, but seeing him in this film, I definitely would like to see more of him, so I probably have to see that film at some point. I also really liked what they did with Cable in this film, played by Josh Brolin, who almost steals the show here. Not in a comedic way, because the character himself, they very do much set up that he is not a Deadpool comedic over-the-top character. He is very straightforward, very serious. There are those kind of comedic moments, though, between him and Deadpool, and their chemistry was very on point, and a lot of his humor is just playing up the fact that he's not a funny guy. And his reactions to some of the stuff Deadpool says to him, like, that had me cracking up, sometimes even more so than some of the other Deadpool scenes. So Josh Brolin, I think, really killed it. And don't try to compare this with Thanos. It's very easy to just say, well, Thanos was better, because of course, Thanos was actually incredible. Cable and Thanos are two different characters. For this film, I think they did a very excellent job with the character of Cable, and Josh Brolin's performance only elevated it even more so. I also really like the growing relationship between Deadpool and Colossus in this movie. I really enjoyed Colossus in the last film, and I thought he was very funny, and I think he worked off of Deadpool well, but in this one, they also try to grow that relationship more, while making it just even more so comedic, just considering the scenario that they are in, the way they play that up. I thought they did a really good job with that. Like, Colossus could have very easily been just the guy in the background, like, hey, I'm here from the last film, and they kind of want to be back, so here I am, but he really wasn't like that in this movie. I think they did a really good job with him. Negasonic Teenage Warhead, however, I was a little disappointed in, because I liked her character in the first film, and I wanted to see where else she could go in this film, and they introduce an aspect of her and another character, Yukio, and I was interested to see where they could go, see what kind of chemistry these characters could have, see how they interacted with Deadpool more, but they didn't really play a whole lot in this film. They show up and they have their moments, but it's not really anything memorable, and I was a little disappointed because I wanted to see more of Negasonic in the first film, and here she is back in the second one, and I feel like she's still better in the first film. Domino, however, as a new character, she was very good. Zazie Beetz did a very good job playing this character, and her power is luck, and I was actually interested to see, like, how is that going to play out in this film, and because of her name Domino, they kind of show it, like, as, like, domino effect, because, like, this happens and this leads this to happen, which is how she gets out of this situation by this, like, kind of stuff like that. And I thought that was very cool. I think they did the character very well, and Zazie Beetz, her performance, her snarky attitude, reacting to Wade Wilson, like, I thought that was perfect. They worked perfectly with each other, and she's a part of the Team X-Force, and I don't really want to say a whole lot, because the trailers actually haven't given a whole lot about the X-Force, and I was a little surprised by that, because going in, I didn't really know what to expect, because the only shot I really associate the X-Force with is the stuff with the plane, and they're jumping out of the plane and that skydiving shot, and the trailers did a very good job not showing off the X-Force, because the things they do with these characters, oh my god, was not expecting it. Like, it's so hard to talk about what happened without spoiling it, but it's something you absolutely need to see blind, completely unaware of. All I will say is, anything you are expecting with the X-Force, you're about to be completely subverted with your expectations. Holy crap. It's much better than you'd think. Like, it's much better, and really clever, honestly. As far as characters go, besides Negasonic being a little bit underutilized in this film, I'd say the character treatments are better in this film, as well as the action sequences, which is kind of expected because David Leitch is stepping in, and he's had a lot of experience with John Wick and Atomic Blonde and other stunt stuff in his past, but the action sequences in this film, I was actually very impressed in. There are some moments that I thought actually were much better than the action that happened in the first movie. You have certain action stuff that happens in the beginning that's very fun and very well choreographed in this prison break sequence that is very intense and brutal, and then you have more fun stuff but also still kind of intense stuff like the truck sequence. Just every action scene from beginning to end had me kind of thrilled, and it had that perfect stylized filmmaking that David Leitch is kind of known for having at this point. I do have some gripes with certain visual effects here and there. I wouldn't say everything about the visuals was terrible, because there are a lot of good visual moments, but there are a few times where the CG becomes noticeable. Now, in the first film, is the CGI flawless? No, like, you can tell it's CGI, but I didn't think any of it looked awful or completely distracting. Like, I thought for the budget that they had, I thought the CG was well utilized. In this film, the budget has been upped, which does lead into a lot of very fun, very much so bigger action sequences, but it does lead to some CG moments that feel more noticeable than I would have preferred. And there's one thing that's CG that's a spoiler, and I can't talk about it, but for the most part, I wasn't bugged by it. Like, you can tell that this thing is CG, but like, considering the context of the movie, I wasn't completely bothered by it, plus Deadpool makes a joke about it, so whatever. But there's certain other moments, like a shot of Domino running in the street, and the way the camera moves around, and you can just tell everything has been replaced with CG, and I was like, oh no, that does not look too good. And there are other moments like that that happen that I just wasn't a huge fan of visually, but there are good visual effects moments. It's pretty much just like Infinity War in that way, where pretty much the majority of the film visually is very good, but then you have those moments where you're like, oh, I'm not so sure how to feel about that. But moving right along, as far as things improving upon the first film, I'd say a lot of the comedy in this film is actually much bigger and much better than some of the stuff in the first film. And I think the first film is like a perfect superhero satire. This one has a lot of great jokes, especially one that caught me completely off guard, and it's mainly because they spent so much time building up on it, and considering that this is a Deadpool movie, you're kind of thinking like, okay, this is gonna lead into some funny stuff, but then as you're watching it go along and they're continuing to build up on it and you're actually kind of taking it more seriously, all of a sudden, just the joke happens, the punchline hits, and it's so out of nowhere, and it made me laugh so much harder than like almost anything else that's come out this year. It's one of the funniest scenes ever. You'll know it as soon as it happens. But of course, if you ask me, the mid-credit scene might be better than the actual movie. Can't say anything else. All I will say is the MCU has been topped as far as post-credit scenes. Like, Jesus Christ. This is so good. However, as much as I was laughing a lot at this film, sometimes in pain, like in my chest, laughing too much, there are those scenes that kind of felt like they were dragging on a little bit, mainly because Deadpool was riffing a lot, and it just kind of felt like Ryan Reynolds was on set all day just riffing all these jokes, and they were just kind of like, we're gonna keep in as much as this as possible. And yeah, it's funny, but when you get to joke, and then immediately, like another second, the joke is still kind of going on, and the scene itself just feels like it's starting to drag out longer than it should have, like that's when I start to have a problem with it. And sure, the jokes were funny, like I said, but when it's joke after joke after joke after joke, and the scene is being dragged out because of this, it's kind of losing its impact. But besides that, and some noticeable CG and some familiar things that you can recognize from the first film that just aren't as special as when they were used in the first film, I had a really good blast with this movie. It's not perfect and it's not as amazing as I think the first Deadpool is, but the action is way better, the humor at times is outstanding, and some things will be remembered by me for the remainder of this year. Like some best scene of the year worthy stuff going on here, especially with some of the moments between Deadpool and Colossus and Cable and Domino and all of these characters. And I know certain things about the Deadpool franchise because of Disney buying Fox and also the emphasis on more X-Force stuff. There are some news sources saying that they're unsure if Deadpool 3 is even gonna happen, but I really hope that it does, because the first film and this one too just give me just this great refreshing vibe to see these superhero movies that take themselves seriously, and then you get to Deadpool, which takes itself seriously, but for the most part doesn't, and it's just a complete joke. It's a complete farce on what a superhero film is. And seeing that kind of treatment with the Deadpool character, seeing him completely own up to his fourth wall breaking stuff, like, I love that. I love the character of Deadpool. I want to see more of him. Please, Disney, when you buy Fox, officially, when you get through the antitrust stuff, please, keep him R-rated, keep him perfect. I'm gonna give Deadpool 2 a B+. Like I said earlier, there are certain flaws that I had with this film that, because of them, I can't really give it a higher grade, but there's so much good stuff here. There's so much to really enjoy about this film that, honestly, I could see myself watching this film again. Like, there are certain comedies that you enjoy the first time, but you can't really see yourself watching. Deadpool 2, I want to see this again. Like, it's so much fun. And of course, there's other jokes that you might not have caught on to the first time. Maybe a certain cameo that maybe was too quick and you didn't pick up on it. There's stuff like that that happens that just really makes me want to see this film again. But if you've seen Deadpool 2 already, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.